impossible to ignore the gnawing anxiety building inside her. The texts were relentless, filled with cryptic warnings about Taehyung's true identity, culminating in a picture of them at the restaurant and another of Taehyung in a luxury office, clad in an impeccable tuxedo. The caption read, "He is the CEO of Hidden Dream, Kim Taehyung." Mine's world spun as everything clicked into place. The scent of expensive cologne, his reaction when she showed him the picture of the CEO, the restaurant he reserved, it all felt like a cruel joke. Skyra's words resonated in her mind. Unable to silence the storm inside her, Vine followed the address from the last message and found herself walking inside the mansion that seemed too grand to be real. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. The maid led her to the sitting room where an older woman sat gracefully. Her eyes were sharp, a thin smile curving her lips as she took in wine. "So you are the one who has my grandson wrapped around her little finger," she said coldly, glaring at Vine head to toe with disgust. Vine glanced the hem of her shirt. "What's so special about you? She's even more plain than I expected." I looked at the young girl who appeared out of nowhere. "I'm not here to listen to any of your nonsense. I just want to make sure about him." Vine's tone was as cold as ice. Hera and Taehyung's grandma chuckled. "Do you think you are even worthy of saying Taehyung's name? How could you think of being with my grandson? Take your trash and return to your garbage dump." Mrs. Kang picked the jacket from beside her and threw it at her face along with the gloves that Vine gave to Taehyung when he was going. Hera stood right in front of Vine. "I'm Taehyung's fiancé. We are getting married soon. He was just playing around with you," she said with a mocking smirk. I tried hard not to break down in front of them while Mrs. Kang sent the maid to call out Taehyung. Vine's heart sank further into her chest as moments stretched into an eternity. Then from the grand staircase, Taehyung appeared, his expression a mask of annoyance. "What's it now, Grandma? As you said, I'm here." His voice halted abruptly when he saw Vine. The color drained from his face, his eyes wide with shock. "So this is your truth, Kim Taehyung." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears as she stared at him, her expression one of disbelief and heartbreak. "No, Vine, it's not what you think." He began stepping forward, but she held up a hand, stopping him mid-step. "I won't believe in your lies anymore." She screamed to pick the gloves and the jacket. "Then why would you explain it to her? Who permit you, an outsider, to interfere in my business?" He snapped at Hera. "Taehyung, Hera is your fiancé. Why would you forsake her for some stranger girl?" Vine straightened and made her way out. Barely dragging her feet, Taehyung ignored his grandma and ran after Vine. "Vine, wait please." He grabbed her wrist, but she yanked off his hand and strode out as tears rolled down her eyes. Before Taehyung could go out after her, Hera held his arm. "Taehyung, let her go. She's just a trash." Taehyung pushed her to the ground harshly and crouched to her level, choking her. "Not a word against Vine. I'll forget you are a woman." He released her with a jerk and stood. "Don't take a step out of here, Taehyung." He turned and chuckled bitterly. "You're following your mother's footsteps, Taehyung. You'll end up like her." Taehyung turned to her sharply. "You killed her. You are the reason she committed suicide. Not only her, but my father also died because of you. You separated me and Mom from him. But when we finally escaped you, he met an accident. It's all because of you. Sometimes I doubt if that was just an accident. Who knows, you paid someone to kill Dad." He growled, his teary eyes bloodshot red. "Shut up. Do you think of me that low?" Then laughed, but it held pain and agony. "You can do anything. If you couldn't see the tears and pain of your only daughter, how can any of us expect mercy from you?" He blinked his tears and took a deep breath. "You destroyed my parents, but I won't let you destroy me. I sever all my ties with you," he said and made his way out. "Hey, you can't do this. You're nothing without the hidden dream," his grandma yelled from behind. "You wanted control over me, but you have no idea what I am capable of." He said final words and disappeared out of her sight. Meanwhile, Vine blindly ran to her house, clutching the jacket and gloves to her chest. She never felt so hollow, so achingly empty from inside like she felt today. She dropped onto the worn-out couch and buried her face in her hands, sobbing, sobs shaking her entire body. The betrayal, the ache, it was all too much. Time slipped by unnoticed as tears soaked her face, her chest heaving with every sob. A sudden sharp knock on the door jolted her. She froze, her heart stopping for a moment as Taehyung's voice came through, muffled but desperate. "Fine, please let me explain." She clenched her fist, staying silent. The knocking grew louder, more desperate. "Fine, please open the door, I need to talk to you." With trembling legs, she stood, wiping her tear-streaked face, and swung the door open. Taehyung stood there, eyes rimmed with red, chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. His usually composed face was a mess of emotions, but before he could say a word, Wine's voice cracked through the silence. "Haven't you made enough fun of me? Are you not satisfied with the humiliation you brought to me?" she asked with a blank face. "No, it's not like that. Let me explain." Taehyung's eyes shimmered with tears. "You made fun of me. You lied to me. You made a joke out of my feelings. What's there to explain?" She screamed, the anguish in her voice slicing through the night. Her voice broke into a sob as she met his gaze, and the sheer devastation in her eyes clenched at his heart like a vice. "No, Wine, please. I never meant to hurt you. I never lied about who I was. I never said I was homeless. You assumed and I let you believe. It was because I wanted to be close to you. I wanted to tell you the truth at the right time." His voice shook as tears streamed down his face. "You played with my feelings, with me, Taehyung." Wine's voice rose again, her face pounding against his chest as if she could push away the pain. "You don't belong here. You don't belong in this world. This poor, small neighborhood. You're a CEO and I'm just..." Her voice broke off as sobs overtook her, her words dissolving into hiccups. Taehyung's heart ached at the sight of her crumbling before him. He reached out, cupping her face in his cold, trembling hands. "Don't say that, Wine. Don't ever say that. You have no idea what you have become to me. I can't live without you. Every path I take, every choice I make, it all leads back to you. You're not just someone I care for, Wine. You're everything." His thumbs brushed against her tear-streaked cheeks. For a heartbeat, she saw the thing who would linger in her kitchen, who laughed with her, who looked at her with eyes that spoke of unspoken promises. But the weight of his deception crushed that moment as fast as it came. She pushed him back, tears streaming again. "Don't come back here. We are nothing but strangers." And before he could stop her, she shut the door. On the other side, Taehyung stood motionless, a cold night air biting into his skin. He felt hollow, like something vital had been ripped from him, sliding down to the ground. He rested his back against the door. "I won't leave, Wine. I won't leave until you talk to me, no matter how long it takes." Inside, Wine sat with her back to the door, her knees pulled to her chest. Both of them sobbed silently, reminiscing the moments they spent together. Time skipped. Time had slipped by like a blur, blurring days into nights and stretching hours into an endless night. Taehyung hadn't moved from Wine's doorstep for what seemed like an eternity, his exhaustion making him look like a ghost of the man he once was. The pain in his chest had been gnawing at him for days. When his vision blurred and his body collapsed against the wooden frame, Wine's heart seized in panic. She rushed to him, her shaking hands fumbling to find his phone and call the first contact. Moments later, a team of suited men arrived and lifted him, but Wine, with tears streaming down her face, took a step back. This was the end, she told herself. It had to be. Days turned into weeks. Wine didn't dare ask about him or his recovery. Tonight, Wine called Kyra, but she didn't answer her calls. So she went to a bar and downed glass after glass. She then stumbled out of the bar, the cool night air, the world spinning as she sat on the footpath. She clutched her head, sobs racking her body as she cursed the universe, cursed her heart and Taehyung. Why Why did you do this, 𝐁𝐫𝐤𝐧𝐠? I hate you so much. She choked, throwing her fists weakly into the air. A shadow shifted beside her, and a familiar voice called her name. Why? David's tone was soft, hesitant. He lowered himself onto the footpath beside her, his eyes scanning her tear-streaked face. What happened to you? He asked. His condition was no different than her. The only difference was he was not as drunk as her. She laughed, a hollow bitter sound. 𝐁𝐫𝐤𝐧𝐠 happened to me. That bastard deceived me, but you know, it's not entirely his fault, she said, holding David's arm. Remember, Grace said I was a fool. She was not wrong. David wiped his face and patted her hand, holding it. You're not a fool, Wine. You're just too kind. He sniffed, staring at her. Wine, I don't know what to do. I don't want to be with Grace, and I can't move on from you, he whispered, biting his lips. I don't know when Grace took advantage of my drunken state and got pregnant, but my love for you is the purest thing in me. My mom will never understand this. A single tear traced down his cheek. I looked at him with half-closed eyes. Hey you, we're good. She poked his arm and smiled, sniffing. David smiled slightly, staring at her face without even blinking. Before he could speak, he felt a strong push and the door shifted. 𝐁𝐫𝐤𝐧𝐠 was there, his eyes furious and burning as he cradled Wine in his arms. Stay away from her. The sight of him made David freeze, his jaw clenched as he swallowed down the pain of being brushed aside once more. Wine turned to face 𝐁𝐫𝐤𝐧𝐠, trying to open her eyes wide. 𝐁𝐫𝐤𝐧𝐠, she murmured and touched his face, breaking into tears once more. I hate you, 𝐁𝐫𝐤𝐧𝐠, I hate you so much. She slapped his face weakly and placed her head on his chest as her head spun. People like us don't deserve her, 𝐁𝐫𝐤𝐧𝐠. 𝐁𝐫𝐤𝐧𝐠's gaze hardened. You might not, but don't assume to know me. He lifted Wine and strode away while she clung to his arm, unable to tell what was real and what was a cruel dream. David let out a hollow chuckle, staring up at the sky. 𝐁𝐫𝐤𝐧𝐠 brought Wine to his house. Wine, half conscious and barely aware of her surroundings, clutched at 𝐁𝐫𝐤𝐧𝑠's shirt, mumbling incoherent words. Her brows furrowed and she whispered through the fog of alcohol. 𝐁𝐫𝐤𝐧𝑠, you bastard. Liar, I hate you. His throat tightened as guilt and longing welled within him. Carefully he laid her on the soft bed, brushing a strand of hair away from her flushed face. Her skin was warm, her cheeks filled with tears. Even in the dim light, she was heartbreakingly beautiful. As he settled beside her, Wine's eyes fluttered open, glassy and unfocused. She reached out weakly, fingers brushing his hand as if trying to make sure he was real. Why did you deceive me? Was it food? The sound of her broken words was like a dagger in his chest. He leaned closer, his voice shaking. No, Wine, it wasn't supposed to be like this. I wanted to tell you, but before that, I had to prepare myself for it. She let out a soft sob, her hand slipping away as exhaustion took over. Liar, she murmured as he pulled her under, unaware of the pain that shone in his eyes. 𝐁𝐫𝐤𝐧𝑠 couldn't look away from her. He cradled her close in his arms, wrapped securely around her, as if he could hold her broken pieces together. His lips found her temple, pressing a tender kiss there. I love you, he whispered, burying his face in her hair, inhaling the familiar scent that felt like home. Next morning, Wine stirred her head, throbbing slightly. Blinking, she took in the lavish and familiar room. And he played in her chest as she sat up, confused and scared. Just then the door creaked open and 𝐁𝐫𝐤𝐧𝑠 stepped in, holding a tray with a glass of water and some medicine. His gaze softened when he saw her wide-eyed look. It's for the hangover. Wine looked up at him, her expression blank as she struggled to piece together the events of the night before. What am I doing here? And where is this place? She asked, her voice low. Then shoved his hands into his pockets. This is my house. I found you on the road last night. You were drunk. He watched as she slowly recalled the blurry memories of the night, her face tightening in realization. She stood swiftly, intent on leaving, but he stepped forward, his hand gently gripping her wrist. "Sit down and take this so we can talk," he said softly, gesturing towards the glass of water. Her eyes flashed with defiance as she pulled her hand away. "There's nothing to talk about. You lied to me, deceived me, and trampled me. What's left to talk about?" Taehyung's shoulders slumped as he took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "When that woman revealed you everything in a wrong way. I wanted to tell you after I came back, but before that I had to set things right with my grandma. She's been pushing me to marry Hera, and she found about us. I couldn't risk putting you in danger. There was never us, just I and you." She glared at him, then pressed his lips and stepped forward. "Nonetheless, she called me to have a final talk and stay with her for a while, but I didn't expect her to be this vicious." Wine chuckled, interrupting him. "Like grandma, like grandson. You're the evil of evils." He bit his lips, hurt flashed across his face. "You're changing your statement. You said I was innocent." She shook her head. "No, Mr. Kim, I was too new. You're evil." He looked at her with longing-filled eyes. "Don't call me that, it's Taehyung." Wine just not looking away. "Anyway, what's the point of telling me all these things now? Couldn't you tell in the past 2 months? I became selfish and I was scared as well. I thought you would leave me, so I couldn't find the courage to tell it. I had to be prepared for it. So selfish of you." Wine said with disdain and turned around to leave, but Taehyung held her and pinned her against the wall. "Please forgive me, Wine, don't leave me." She pushed him with a frown. "You trampled all over my feelings, made me feel like I was some foolish girl falling for a lie. It's over. How can you still say don't leave me? We come from different worlds. We are no match for each other." She blinked her tears, then shook his head, holding her face. "No, Wine, don't say that. I never wanted to hurt you. I would never do that. You are my precious treasure. I'm just an empty shell without you," he whispered through teary eyes. He held her hand and placed it on his hair. "Ruffle it, just like you used to. Please don't shut me out like this." One stared at him for a while and pushed her hand away, her face hardening as she took a step back. "I don't want to see you anymore, Mr. Kim," she whispered, each word heavy with the hurt he had caused her. Without another glance, she turned, making her way towards the door. They felt a faint pain in his chest. His breath went uneven. "I won't leave you, Wine. No matter what you say or do, I'm not letting go. I have cut off all ties with my grandmother. Nothing and no one will come between us. You're mine, Wine. And I don't give up on what's mine," he said, breathing heavily. Wine let out a sigh and walked out, disappearing from his sight. Few months later. A few months drifted by since Wine had been treating Taehyung as if he didn't even exist. It hurt him a lot, but he knew it was nothing in front of the agony she's been through. No, Wine was on the phone with Kyra. Wine, it's been months and he hasn't given up. Trust me, he's sincere and ashamed of his act. Wine hummed in response, entering the house. "I'll talk about it later. See you soon." She ended the call, slipped her phone into her bag. Just as she lifted her head, a gasp escaped her mouth, seeing Taehyung seated in his familiar spot on the couch, looking as composed as ever, as if he had never left. She closed the door and crossed her arms, leaning against the door. "What are you doing here, and how did you get in?" Taehyung rose from the couch, shrugging his shoulders. "Maybe because I still have the key from when I used to stay here," he said, holding up the key between his fingers before tucking it into his pocket. As he stepped closer, a shadow of possessiveness crossed his gaze. Who was that guy today? What was he saying to you? She rolled her eyes, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "My colleague, he asked me out for a date." The desperation in his eyes was evident. "You can't date anyone besides me." I raised her brows with a smirk as if trying to say, "Who are you to order me?" He reached out, touching her arm, his eyes searching hers. "You weren't like this before, Wine," he said helplessly. She pulled back gently, a bittersweet smile gracing her lips. "Thank yourself for it. Please forgive me, Wine. I don't know how much more I can take." Wine took a step close to him, staring right into his eyes. "Already giving up, Mr. Kim? Weren't you tired when you deceived me for 4 months?" Taehyung took a deep breath, lowering his head. "I have gathered the bunch of your flowers and apology notes near the garbage dump. Take them with you on your way back." She turned away from him, not able to see his pained expression. "And thank you for everything you have done." clearing my records, sabotaging my father's company. You should probably go before your own business goes bankrupt with all the time you're spending here stalking me. Then grabbed her arm and spun her towards him. I'm willing to let it go bankrupt as long as you forgive me, he said desperately. I looked away, unable to hold his gaze. Then swallowed and looked around. Where are my jacket and gloves? I want them back. She glanced at him. I threw them. What? Why? He grabbed her shoulders and asked with disbelief. I brought them back with the pieces of my shattered heart, trust, and hope. So I threw them in the garbage. She said in a low tone, tears glistening her eyes. You have no idea what it meant to me. How could you do that, Wine? His hands fell to his sides. Her heart clenched at the sight of him. Just as she reached out her hand to touch his arm, the room went dark as the electricity cut off, plunging them into shadows. Wine's heartbeat quickened as she took a few steps back. Taehyung, she whispered while Taehyung turned on the flashlight on his phone. His arms found her in the dark, drawing her close and cradling her. I'm here, you don't need to be scared. She stared at his face, feeling a lump forming in her throat. His words reminded her of the first day he came to her house. He dialed a number on his phone and she heard him saying to his subordinate to check the fuse. Wine slumped on his chest as her legs gave away. Wine, are you okay? I'll get you out of here, let's go. She swiftly shook her head. I don't want to go anywhere, she said in a low tone, then sat still holding her. They both remained silent, lost in their own thoughts, when Wine's voice broke the silence. Taehyung, do you think I'm being too harsh on you? Her voice was muffled against his chest. He tightened his grasp around her. I deserve it, Wine. I wouldn't mind, even if you kill me, but the condition is I must die in your arms. As long as you are with me, anything you do or say is right, he said before placing a kiss on top of her head. She inhaled his cologne, taking a deep breath. I want to close my eyes and I don't want to wake up until everything is fine. It's tiring. Both of them felt calmness seeping into the depths of their soul, feeling each other's warmth after so long. Give me all your sorrows, burdens and pain, he said in a low tone. Wine, when I saw you for the first time on the bridge, I felt something indescribable. After coming to your house and spending time with you, I realized how it feels to be home. You are my home, Wine, my precious treasure. He pressed a long kiss to her temple. Wine felt a sense of tranquility, hearing his beautiful words. She pulled out and ruffled his hair, then smiled. Is it a truce then? She smiled back, shrugging her shoulders. Suddenly, Taehyung felt a sharp pain in his chest. He swallowed hard, loosening his grip around Wine and breathing in gasp. Wine pulled away, feeling something was wrong. What happened to him? She placed her hands on his chest, his face twisted in pain. I'm fine as long as you're here. She rubbed his chest in a gentle circles to soothe him. Her touch seemed to ease his discomfort, and he leaned, resting his head on her shoulder weakly. Don't scare me, Taehyung. I'll just call your assistant. Wait. She was about to move away, but he held her tightly, snuggling into her neck. It's just an old illness. I had a hole in my heart. Sometimes the pain just comes back. The electricity returned, filling the room with light once more. Wine picked up his phone and called his assistant to send him to the hospital. He lifted his head, taking a shuddered breath, and wiped her tears. I'm fine, he mumbled with a smile. They don't know, grabbing their attention. He's here, let's go. You're not going. She tried to protest, but he shook his head. No, you're already tired. You stay here and take some rest. I'm fine. You can see. He said in a low tone, but she seemed unconvinced. I'll be on call with you. He stopped and patted her cheek. Wine nodded half-heartedly and escorted him out. Time skip. Wine was standing in the makeup room, glancing at her reflection with a nervous smile, fixing small details on her dress. Today was their wedding day and it felt like a dream. She heard the door open behind her, expecting 𝐘𝐨𝐬 to enter. 𝐘𝐨𝐬, I'm almost, she began but froze mid-sentence as she turned around to see Taehyung standing there. He was leaning against the door frame, his gaze locked on her, drinking in the sight of her in her bridal dress. He looked as if he had forgotten how to breathe. Taehyung, what are you doing here? 𝐘𝐨𝐬 will kick you out if she sees you, she whispered, rushing over to him. He just chuckled, pulling her into his arms with a smile. Let her kick me out. I had to see my bride before everyone else, he said in a low tone, leaning his face close to hers and tracing his fingers from her temple to neck. You're stunning, absolutely breathtaking. He brought his face further closer, his lips brushed against her ear, sending chills down her spine. Wine's cheeks flushed, her heart fluttering at his closeness. He noticed her shy expression as he pulled away and couldn't resist kissing her, his grin widening. What? Are you getting shy now? One slapped his arm lightly. Get out of here, 𝐘𝐨𝐬 will be coming. He ignored it and pulled out a box from inside his. He opened it, revealing a delicate diamond necklace. Her eyes widened and she gasped as he lifted it out of the box, gently placing it around her neck and fastening the clasp. It is limited edition. Taehyung, this is so expensive. Why did you buy it? What? Don't you like it? He turned her around, facing the mirror, and encircled his arms around her waist from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Of course I love it, but this is... He interrupted her. You're worth far more than this wine. This is just a small reminder of that, he said, kissing her neck. Wine leaned on his chest, resting her hands on his. Thank you, Taehyung, she said in a low tone while Taehyung's lips trailed down to her shoulder as he tightened his grip. I can't wait anymore, he whispered, pressing his cheek against hers and staring at their reflection when Wine's eyes landed on his pocket. Why did you bring this close? Taehyung looked down and swiftly tucked it inside his pocket. You have given me that jacket and gloves. It will always be with me. These have beautiful memories. I want to keep them alive, just as you still have those flowers and notes. Wine smiled and turned to face him. All right, as you wish. She leaned and placed a kiss on the spot of his heart. Taehyung groaned, clutching his chest. Wine, I might get a heart attack today. I'll frame this shirt. He grinned, pointing at the lipstick mark. Wine smiled, shaking her head. Let me wipe it, someone might see it. He held her wrist. No, I'm serious, I'll frame it. Wine's mouth hung open and she stared at him in disbelief. You're impossible, Taehyung, she said with a smile. Her heart swelled. Anyway, Taehyung, your grandma is not in a good health. Taehyung rolled his eyes, holding her by the waist and pulling her close. Who cares? She wouldn't die so easily, he said with disdain. By the way, I invited David to our wedding, but he left for abroad this morning. Good for him, he might meet his soulmate. Taehyung nodded and kissed her cheek when 𝐘𝐨𝐬 barged in. What the hell? Can Taehyung get out of here? You're not supposed to see Wine. She almost yelled while her 2-year-old boy began crying in her arms. Keep your speaker low, he said, still holding Wine. Wait for me, I'll just give him to his father, then I'll see you, she said through gritted teeth while glaring at Taehyung, and stormed out. Taehyung chuckled, holding Wine's hand. Now go make me the luckiest man alive out there, he said, and walked her out. Taehyung, 𝐘𝐨𝐬 will kill me. Let me see who dares to pass. Even a glare. Wine smiled as her heart pounded. She stepped into the aisle. 𝐘𝐨𝐬 stared at them with wide eyes and her mouth hung open. She glared at him, but he ignored her all the way and stood in front of Wine. Soon they spoke their vows and exchanged their rings. Wine looked at Taehyung with a teary smile. Taehyung was no different than her. A tear slipped down Taehyung's cheek as he held her gaze. He reached up, brushing a tear from her cheek with his thumb, and leaned down, pulling her close as he cupped her face gently and capturing her lips in a soft, deep kiss. The room erupted into cheers, but all Wine could hear was her own heartbeat and the quiet warmth of his presence. As they pulled away, he pressed his forehead to her, smiling, and whispered, Thank you for coming into my life and accepting me, Mrs. Kim.